How many times can one franchise watch their season crumble between the pipes before they finally accept that throwing money at the problem isn't the answer? Welcome back to Boys and Blue News, the only place where Toronto Maple Leafs fans get the unfiltered truth about what's really happening with their beloved team. I'm your host, and today, we're tackling the most frustrating, most infuriating, and most avoidable crisis the Leafs have manufactured all season long. The goaltending carousel is spinning again, and this time, it's spinning faster than ever. If you're just joining us, smash that like button and subscribe right now, because what I'm about to break down for you will fundamentally change how you view the Leafs front office decisions. This isn't just another injury update. This is a masterclass in how not to build a championship roster. Let's dive in. Picture this. It's December 2025. The Maple Leafs are staring down the barrel of yet another season where their goaltending situation has become the primary storyline. Not their elite forwards, not their defensive improvements, not their playoff positioning. No, it's the goaltending. Anthony Stolarz was supposed to be the answer. Remember that? The organization invested significant capital and patience into developing him as a franchise's future between the pipes. But injuries, cruel, relentless injuries, have turned that investment into a cautionary tale. Then came Joseph Woll, a spark of hope, a glimmer of stability. For approximately 72 hours, Leafs Nation actually believed they'd found their guy. The internet was buzzing. Fans were optimistic. The narrative was shifting. And then Wallace went down too. Now we're looking at Dennis Hildy and Art Turk carrying the load. Two young goalies who, let's be honest, were supposed to be developing in the minors right now, not thrust into the pressure cooker of NHL hockey in December. This is what desperation looks like. This is what happens when an organization fails to properly address a critical position. But here's where it gets interesting, and frankly, where the front office's incompetence becomes almost laughable. The internet exploded yesterday with trade speculation. And among all the wild proposals floating around social media, one deal dominated the conversation. Joseph Woll to the St. Louis Blues for Jordan Binnington. On the surface, it sounds like genius. Binnington is a Stanley Cup champion. He's being discussed as a potential Team Canada Olympian. He's proven at the highest level. The narrative writes itself. Desperate team acquires proven veteran to save their season. Except it's completely, utterly, financially impossible. Let me break down the math for you, because this is where fantasy collides with reality. Jordan Binnington carries a salary cap hit of approximately $5.1 million annually. Joseph Woll, around $2.5 million. That's a $2.6 million difference that Toronto simply doesn't have lying around. The Leafs are already operating in a constrained cap environment. They've made moves to create flexibility, sure, but not enough to absorb a contract of that magnitude without gutting their roster. And here's the kicker. St. Louis wouldn't even consider this deal without receiving significant additional assets. We're talking draft picks, prospect capital, or established NHL players. The Blues aren't moving a starting goalie for a backup and spare change. That's not how professional hockey trades work. So what would Toronto actually need to surrender? Probably a mid-round pick. Maybe a prospect with legitimate upside. Possibly even a young NHL player like Nick Robertson or Kaylee Jarnkrok. Names that were actually mentioned in these hypothetical discussions. But why would you do that? Why would you sacrifice depth, cap flexibility, and future assets to acquire a goalie who's only marginally better than what you already have, especially when your actual problem isn't goaltending talent? It's goaltending availability. This is where I need to be brutally honest with you, Leafs Nation. The Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending crisis isn't actually about finding the perfect goalie. It's about accepting an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the answer isn't on the market. Sometimes the answer is patience. We live in an era of instant gratification. When something breaks, we want to fix it immediately. When a problem emerges, we want to throw resources at it. That's the modern sports mentality. But that mentality has failed the Leafs repeatedly. Look at the history. How many times has Toronto made a desperate, mid-season acquisition at the goaltending position that actually solved anything? How many times has a big trade deadline splash in net actually resulted in playoff success? The answer is not very often. Instead, what we consistently see is the Leafs overreacting, overpaying, and creating new problems while attempting to solve old ones. It's a cycle, and the Binnington proposal is just the latest example of that cycle spinning out of control. Here's what actually needs to happen. First, Anthony Stolarz needs to get healthy. He's the future. He's the investment. He's the guy the organization believes in long term. An injury setback in December doesn't erase that reality. Give him time. Let the medical staff do their job. Rushing him back would be exponentially worse than playing with temporary solutions. Second, Joseph Woll needs to be evaluated properly. One injury doesn't define a career, but neither does one good stretch. The Leafs need to see more of Woll when he's healthy. They need data. They need to understand whether he's a long-term piece or a temporary option. You can't make that determination in 72 hours. Third, and this is crucial, the team needs to accept that Dennis Hildy and Art Turk might actually be capable of holding down the fort for a few weeks. Yes, they're young. Yes, they're inexperienced. But they're also not completely incompetent. They didn't make it to the NHL by accident. Give them an opportunity. Let them prove themselves. Sometimes, the best solution is the one that's already in your organization. And if the Leafs absolutely must acquire another goalie, then Brad Treliving needs to pursue realistic, affordable options that don't compromise the team's structural integrity. So, let's talk about the goalies who actually make sense for Toronto. The names that have been circulating in legitimate trade discussions, not the fantasy proposals that dominate Reddit threads. Laurent Brossoit has been mentioned repeatedly, and for good reason. He's available. He's experienced. He's not going to cost you a first-round pick or your best prospect. He fits the profile of a veteran backup who can stabilize the situation without creating new cap problems. Is he a long-term solution? No, but that's not what Toronto needs right now. They need someone who can competently play 10 to 15 games while their primary options recover. Alex Lyon is another name in that same conversation. Similar profile, similar cost, similar expectations. He's not going to win you a Stanley Cup. He's not going to transform your team. But he will show up, he will compete, and he will give your team a fighting chance on nights when Hildy or Turk are in net. These aren't sexy acquisitions. They don't make highlight reels. They don't generate the kind of buzz that gets fans excited on social media. But you know what? They actually work. The Leafs don't need a home run. They need a single. They need a base hit. They need to get through this injury crisis without sacrificing their future or their present cap flexibility. Think about it strategically. If Toronto acquires someone like Brossoit or Lyon, here's what happens. 1. The cap hit is minimal. We're talking $1 to $2 million, not $5+ million. 2. The asset cost is reasonable. Maybe a conditional pick. Maybe a minor prospect. Nothing that impacts the team's ability to make moves at the trade deadline if needed. 3. The exit strategy is clean. If Stolarz returns healthy, you simply move on. If Woll proves himself, same thing. You're not locked into a long-term commitment that haunts you down the road. 4. You maintain flexibility. You keep your draft picks. You keep your prospects. You keep your options open for other potential trades or acquisitions. Compare that to Binnington's scenario, where you're immediately underwater cap-wise. You've surrendered assets you can't get back, and you create a new problem while attempting to solve an old one. This is the difference between smart management and panic management. And from everything we're seeing out of Brad Treliving's office, it appears the front office understands this distinction. The Leafs aren't making desperate moves. They're being measured. They're being strategic. They're letting the situation develop before overreacting. Is that frustrating for fans who want immediate solutions? Absolutely. But it's also the right approach. Now, I want to zoom out for a second because this goaltending crisis isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening within the context of a larger organizational challenge that the Leafs have been grappling with for years. The reality is this. Toronto has never adequately solved the goaltending position. Think about it. How many different goalies have worn a Leafs jersey over the past decade? How many times has the organization cycled through starters? How many times have they believed they'd finally found the guy, only to be disappointed? This isn't bad luck. This isn't coincidence. This is a systemic issue. Part of it is the pressure that comes with playing in Toronto, the media scrutiny, the fan expectations, the constant criticism. It's a lot for any goalie to handle, and not everyone is mentally equipped to thrive in that environment. Part of it is the organization's own decision-making. The Leafs have made some questionable choices regarding goaltending investments over the years. They've overpaid for proven veterans who didn't deliver. They've failed to properly develop young talent. They've created situations where their goalies are set up to fail. And part of it, let's be honest, is just the nature of the position. Goaltending is unpredictable. Injuries happen. Performance fluctuates. You can do everything right and still end up with a crisis. But here's what matters right now. The Leafs have an opportunity to break this cycle. They have young talent in Stolarz and Wallace. They have the organizational infrastructure to develop them properly. They have the cap flexibility to make smart, measured moves when necessary. What they don't have is the luxury of panic. What they can't afford is another desperate, poorly conceived trade that creates more problems than it solves. The Binnington proposal represents everything the Leafs should not do. It's reactive instead of proactive. It's expensive instead of efficient. It's short-term thinking instead of long-term planning. And if the front office can resist that temptation, if they can stay disciplined and patient, then maybe, just maybe, this goaltending crisis becomes a turning point instead of another chapter in a long book of disappointment. So what should we expect in the coming days and weeks? Scenario 1. Stolarz returns healthy, reclaims a starting job, and this entire crisis becomes a footnote in the season's narrative. The Leafs move forward with their original plan, and we all collectively forget this ever happened. Scenario 2. Wallace proves himself as a capable backup, and the Leafs maintain their current roster composition without making any trades. They ride out the injury situation with internal solutions and emerge stronger on the other side. Scenario 3. The Leafs make a modest acquisition, someone like Brossoit or Lyon, to provide depth and insurance. They spend minimal assets, maintain cap flexibility, and keep their options open. Scenario 4. Something unexpected happens. Another injury, a surprising trade opportunity, a development we haven't anticipated. The front office adapts and responds accordingly. What we shouldn't see is a panic move. What we shouldn't see is the Leafs sacrificing their future for a short-term fix. What we shouldn't see is another chapter in the organization's history of goaltending mismanagement. The next 30 days will be telling. They'll reveal whether Brad Treliving and the Leafs organization have actually learned from their past mistakes, or whether they're destined to repeat them. I'm cautiously optimistic. The front office has shown more discipline this season than in previous years. They've made measured moves. They've avoided the temptation to overreact. But we're about to find out if that discipline holds when the pressure really mounts. All right, Leafs Nation, that's the breakdown. That's the reality of the situation. The goaltending crisis is real, but it's not unsolvable. The Binnington trade is a fantasy, not a realistic option. And the path forward requires patience, discipline, and smart decision-making. Now I want to hear from you. Should the Leafs make an aggressive move, or should they stick with internal solutions? Comment below. Does the Binnington trade make any sense to you, or is it pure fantasy? Let me know. Between Brossoit, Lyon, and the internal options, who do you think is the most realistic solution? Drop your thoughts. I read every single comment you leave. Every single one. Your perspective matters, and this community thrives on discussion and debate. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button. It genuinely helps the algorithm and ensures more Leafs fans see this content. Subscribe to Boys in Blue News if you haven't already, and activate the notification bell so you never miss an urgent update. We're posting multiple times per week with breaking news, trade analysis, and deep dives into everything happening with your Toronto Maple Leafs. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for supporting this channel. And as always, go Leafs go.